Hey, it's Jordan with TYT and TYT Politics, and I'm here with Aline Brown. You are a reporter, editor with The Intercept, and you are one of three who wrote this really amazing report that I read today about the Dakota Access Pipeline and the movement against it by kind of a dark cabal, I'll call it, of our federal law enforcement agencies, a private mercenary company, and of course, Energy Transfer Partners, the big oil company that was behind all of this. It's a pretty long read. It's very thorough, and it's probably hundreds of public documents you guys were able to obtain. So talk to me first, just like the overarching thing that you found, because it seems to me it confirms what I, who was on the ground there, already suspected, that our federal agencies were basically collaborating with a private paramilitary contractor.
Yeah, so I would say that's really one of the biggest takeaways here. I mean, some of the most disturbing details that immediately pop out are the sort of military and tactical language that's used by these Tiger Swan operatives. Calling this an effort to defeat pipeline insurgencies, categorizing the water protector movement as an ideologically driven insurgency with a strong religious component. So that and these tactics used, such as infiltration, aerial surveillance, etc., are really disturbing. But, what's most disturbing is the way that this information was apparently shared with law enforcement agencies, as you noted. So the documents we have describe lots of information sharing between Tiger Swan and local and federal and state law enforcement agencies, and also sort of state and a goal of providing evidence that or providing intelligence that could be used to aid in prosecutions. Obviously, state law enforcement agencies have a lot of leeway to use invasive surveillance tactics, but there are some guidelines they, should be following, and there's some level of information sharing they're required to do, whereas this private security firm is operating, in much more darkness.
Right. Just so the audience knows, you guys, with public records requests, communications you found were with the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Justice Department, Marshal Service, Bureau of Indian Affairs, and state and local police. What I find very interesting, among many things, is all this happened for all the hyperactive insanity about Donald Trump. The majority of this happened under President Obama, who was just ironically given a Profile and Courage Award. I'm not asking for your take on that, but it's not like all these forces could have been essentially treating and surveilling a large-scale water protectors camp without the president knowing. Would you guess that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I hadn't thought about that, but I would say that federal agencies were certainly aware of some of the invasive surveillance that this private firm was conducting. So, I don't know how far that goes up.
And also, it's one thing that I found really scary. They referred to the protesters as jihadists, and they essentially, a lot of not only their talk but their practices are not very different from how the U.S. military treats the quote war on terror in Iraq, Afghanistan. This Tiger Swan was doing daily reports that they shared with our law enforcement agencies. They were doing surveillance above the camp. They were basically a catalyst for infiltrators going in there. Can you kind of talk about the mix? Because it seems like they got a lot of bang for their buck. They helped with social media and all these things.
Yep. So, so Tiger Swan is very much connected to the global war on terror. They sort of came up as a competitor to Blackwater, this really well-known private security firm operating in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so Tiger Swan. Working with ETP is really sort of this global war on terror coming home. Mm-hmm. So you're right that beyond just working with sources within the camps, as they say, the documents also describe an effort to sort of shift the narrative on how the pipeline is being portrayed in the media. So, we uncovered an individual that was publishing Facebook videos without disclosing his affiliation with Tiger Swan. Those videos were taken down soon after we soon after we reached out to Tiger Swan for comment. But Tiger Swan was sort of acting covertly to create a narrative that was more positive for the pipeline. Mm-hmm. They also talk in the documents about exploiting rifts among water protectors, and that being sort of a key to their efforts. Yeah.
One thing that I found really ironic, the Morton County Sheriff there and all the law enforcement there, the word of the whole movement was trespassing. You're trespassing, even on land that frankly is their land as per treaties. But in your report, it shows that Tiger Swan didn't even have the license to operate in North Dakota. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So that's another really fascinating thing or disturbing thing that came out of this. The global war on terror, it's not like this is the first time that's come home. Muslim communities have experienced extremely invasive surveillance for years, with the FBI, for example, implanting informants in communities that have essentially led to people taking actions that they may not otherwise have and landing in prison. But even the FBI has to follow a set of pretty detailed guidelines for using informants. Whether or not that's effective is a question. But Tiger Swan was able to operate as a security firm, like you said, without even a license with the North Dakota board that licenses security companies. They describe themselves as a management and as a provider of management and IT. Mm-hmm. So which is really disconnected from what we see in the documents, which is really the operations of a security firm.
And one thing that stood out to me was the whole time I was there, and I was there a lot, like I was there 7 times, they talked about, we are totally for, setting a climate where people can peacefully demonstrate, but, it has to be by law. But in the documents you found, it basically says, word for word, that Tiger Swan, working with the law enforcement, was trying to create a narrative. I don't know what the exact word was, to basically a pro-DAPL message. They were also doing PR almost to make the Dakota Access Pipeline more favorable on social media and this and that.
Yep, that's right. The security firm talked a lot about the need to create strategic messaging from the client that drives the message that we are the good guys. tell the real story and address the negative messaging. So there was an effort to create this sort of counter narrative, an information operation that involved creating social media accounts that were not obviously affiliated with Tiger Swan. There was also a lot of analysis of media coverage within the document. So, for example, one document talked about an article that might expand the tribe's narrative outside of the Native American community media outlets, and that being something that's of concern. There was a lot of discussion of the need for a social engagement plan. And as I mentioned, in one September document, they discuss working with an individual by the name of Robert Rice on this social engagement plan. So, Rice appears as Alan Rice in a series of videos where he provides critical commentary of the protests. These are posted on Facebook pages called Defend Iowa and Netizens for Progress and Justice, without disclosing any affiliation to Tiger Swan. And, those were removed after the Intercept contacted Tiger Swan.
And also, that's a good segue, because this wasn't just exclusive to North Dakota. They're apparently working for Iowa protests, for Texas, Illinois. You guys found documents that relate to all those places.
Yep. So the documents referenced at least 5 states: Iowa, Illinois, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Texas. And really focusing on the states where the pipeline passes through. The surveillance was certainly not limited to North Dakota, and certainly not limited to the extent of the pipeline's construction. The camps have largely cleared out at this point, but these documents reveal that Tiger Swan is still very active on the ground.
And is there anything in the documents that would explain why the federal government, the FBI, Homeland Security, U.S. Marshals, Bureau of Indian Affairs, why are they so prevalent in protecting a big oil pipeline? I mean, I know that's the elephant in the room, that they call it an infrastructure project, but why did the U.S. federal government amass such forces when there were really very, very, very few notable instances of aggression among the protesters?
Right. I mean, I think those are questions that are important, and we don't have an entirely clear answer to. I think that spokespeople for law enforcement would say that this is sort of a standard, some kind of standard emergency response. But the breadth of agencies involved in the policing the water protectors is alarming.
Right. And can you talk about, there was a phrase, find, fix, and eliminate, that Tiger Swan used?
Yep. So, Tiger Swan frequently used language that we would most affiliate with the global war on terror. So find, fix, finish is a military term that's been used by special forces in the U.S. government's assassination campaign. It's drone campaign against, so-called terrorist targets. And that language appears here in the documents. Find, fix, and eliminate threats to the pipeline is something that comes up. And that's just one example of this militaristic language that seems entirely inappropriate for a movement driven by peaceful indigenous protesters
And
or
there,
water protectors.
right, and there also seems to be racial profiling also, because
Yep.
apparently they got very perturbed when a group of Palestinians came to the camp.
Yep, that's right. So Tiger Swan really hones in on protesters of Middle Eastern descent in some of the documents. So, for example, there's an instance where the document authored by Tiger Swan talks about the presence of additional Palestinians in the camp and the movement's involvement with Islamic individuals. They see that as a dynamic that requires further examination. And, they say currently there's no information to suggest terrorist type tactics or operations, but it cannot be ruled out, and that's sort of based on the presence of Palestinians.
And you guys found documents that kind of show that they were not happy when certain law enforcement wouldn't basically be as fascist as they wanted, in my view. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that was another disturbing thing that we uncovered. So there's a document that talks about this county in Iowa, Lee County, that, according to the document, had recently raised bail, and Tiger Swan was really pleased about that. They really applauded this county for making arrests, charging people participating in direct action with finding them extensively and towing their vehicles. So on the other hand, they talk about 3 other counties in Iowa that they're not so impressed with. And they discuss potentially linking up this Lee County with these other counties to sort of convince them to use more punitive tactics. And it was interesting. I reached out to the Lee County sheriff there and asked him about this, and he only came into office in January. He said that he had never heard of Tiger Swan until actually this week, when a program manager from Tiger Swan stopped into his office and dropped off a card to say hello. So again, these guys are still very present in counties through which the pipeline passes.
I encourage everyone to read it. I could ask you 100 questions, but overall, do you think that to me, this is not, this is kind of stunning because this was the first of its kind, this level of environmental movement that you saw in one place, upwards of 15,000 people at one point. Obviously, the corporate media barely covered it. They only came down if there was the chance of a shootout between veterans and police. But is this mostly about what it's revealed about Tiger Swan, or more revealing about that for the future, the law enforcement that's supposed to protect us apparently is working with private mercenaries to protect big oil?
Yeah, no, I think that is an incredibly disturbing element of this that, doesn't stop at the Dakota Access Pipeline. These pipelines are framed as critical infrastructure and attract a level of law enforcement attention that other types, that a river, for example, there's not the same effort to protect our waters as there is to protect a pipeline. And Tiger Swan, as a profit-driven company, is certainly very interested in working with other pipeline companies on this kind of security response. I think it's important to look at these documents as a product, as a profit-driven product, and a way for Tiger Swan to sell their activities by inflating the dangerousness of water protectors, of people fighting to protect their communities. And that's something that I think we'll have to keep an eye on as the fight moves to other spaces.
Well, I think there's two things that I'll end with. Number one, another great Intercept report last year. It's also a lie that it's even critical infrastructure, because you guys reported that this was being used for foreign exports mostly, like most of these pipelines. So they're not even brutalizing people for stuff we'll use. It's just so this oil company could make money. The same oil company that President Trump's invested in, that Energy Secretary Rick Perry was on the board of. So there's just transparent conflict of interest. And the second thing is, I think it's interesting that our government is perpetrating all this business about Russia and fake news when they were knowingly in bed with someone that was concocting really an alternate universe. I mean, I was there 6 months in a row, sometimes weeks at a time. Aside from maybe a water protector or two throwing a water bottle at a cop, or like a water protector lighting a car on fire, there was no bullets shot by a water protector. There were no bombs exploded by a water protector. There were no grenades lodged by water protectors. But the U.S. government and law enforcement worked alongside someone to create those narratives.
Yep, that's true. And I mean, that's another funny yet disturbing thing that comes through in the documents. These efforts to frame water protectors as violent kind of result in terminology like the making and stockpiling of signs, and language describing the caliber of paintball guns. There's also lots of speculation about illegal activities and violent activities that individuals might conduct, or weapons they might carry. But this is a narrative. What we see in these situation reports is a narrative that's created by a company that is trying to sell a product, a surveillance product, to a pipeline company.
Right. Thank you very much for taking the time. Credit to you and the two others who worked with you on this. I'll put the link under our video, and I'll be definitely following up on this. So thanks again for taking the time.
Yeah, and thanks so much to Alice Sperry and Will Parrish, who are my co-reporters on this. Really great reporters.
Great. Have a great one.
Thank you.